In the early to mid-19th century, the United States was a nation on the brink of division. A land born from the ideals of freedom and unity found itself grappling with profound differences that threatened to tear it asunder. This is a tale of two regions, the North and the South, each embarking on divergent paths that would ultimately lead to the rise of sectionalism. Once, the North and the South shared a common heritage as British colonies. Yet as the 19th century dawned, distinct economic, cultural, and political differences began to emerge. In the North, industrialization was on the rise. Factories and urban centers sprang up, drawing people from rural areas and immigrants from overseas, all in the pursuit of opportunity and progress. This industrial boom fostered a market economy reliant on wage labor and a burgeoning middle class. Education and infrastructure flourished, mirroring the North's rapid transformation into a modern economic powerhouse. In stark contrast, the South remained deeply rooted in agrarian traditions, its economy heavily dependent on agriculture. While the North moved toward mechanization, the Southern economy was shackled to the institution of slavery. Cotton reigned supreme, and its cultivation brought immense wealth to plantation owners. However, it also entrenched a rigid class system and heightened the reliance on enslaved labor. The South's economy was not just agricultural, it was a plantation-based economy, one that resisted industrialization and was drastically different from its northern counterpart. As these economic differences intensified, so too did the cultural and social divides. The North, with a diverse populace thanks to waves of immigrants, embraced a more progressive stance on social issues, focusing on reforms such as abolitionism, temperance, and women's rights. The South, in contrast, was marked by its commitment to maintaining traditional values. Its social order tightly interwoven with the institution of slavery, and its leaders wary of Northern attempts to reshape Southern society. Politically, the rift deepened. The concept of states' rights became a rallying cry in the South, where many believed that states should have the autonomy to govern themselves, particularly in deciding the legality of slavery. The North, on the other hand, increasingly supported federal authority and legislation intended to curtail the expansion of slavery into new territories and states. The tension between federal power and states' rights was not just a theoretical debate. It was a battleground over the nation's moral compass. Legislative measures attempting compromise, such as the Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850, were mere stopgaps, failing to address the underlying issues. Events like the Dred Scott decision and John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry further inflamed passions on both sides, turning political discourse into a fusillade of words and deeds, each side accusing the other of tyranny or treason. As communication improved with developments such as the telegraph and railroads, the harsh rhetoric propagated more quickly and widely, cementing divisions. The rise of sectionalism was inevitable as cultural identity became tightly bound to geographic and economic realities. In the South, their way of life and economy felt under siege by Northern interests, convincing many that their sovereignty and prosperity were at risk. Conversely, in the North, a moral imperative began to grow against the expansion of slavery and the perceived backwardness of the Southern economy. By the time the nation reached the 1860s, these divergent paths had become so pronounced that they envisaged two separate societies. When Abraham Lincoln, a Republican with a platform that opposed the expansion of slavery, was elected president in 1860, it served as the final catalyst. For the South, Lincoln's election was not just political defeat, it was a threat to their very way of life. It was a call to action that united Southern states under a shared cause leading to the secession of 11 states and the eventual outbreak of the Civil War. In conclusion, the rise of sectionalism was not an overnight phenomenon, but rather a gradual divergence of paths shaped by economic interests, cultural identities, and political ideologies. The North's industrial might and progressive views clashed with the South's agrarian economy and traditional values. These differences were not simply disagreements within the same nation, but were becoming insurmountable walls between two distinct worlds. Each side, resolute in its belief in its path's righteousness, ultimately led to a conflict that would decide the future of the United States. Today, understanding these divergent paths reminds us of the complex and often contentious road that brought us to our present. A poignant reflection on unity and division within a nation.